There's no way the Cardinals would entertain a Jordan Walker trade at the deadline, right? Right? What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeffer Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you, evening hours of Tuesday, July 9th, 2024. And with the Cardinals and Royals washed out on Tuesday, rained in the St. Louis area basically all day long, I decided I would hop on here tonight and start the foray into trade conversations a little bit more specifically, a little bit more targeted. And tonight we're talking about Jordan Walker and whether the Cardinals would or should entertain the idea of trading him away ahead of this 2024 MLB trade deadline. Walker has obviously not been with the big club for a while now. He's been in AAA Memphis trying to fine-tune his swing, trying to find that next gear offensively, in particular with the power stroke, to be able to provide the Cardinals the thump toward the middle of their lineup that we all thought Jordan Walker would be involved in giving them at the beginning of the season, let's say. It hasn't gone to plan, but does that fact cause the Cardinals to change course and consider something that would have been unfathomable coming into the year? And maybe it still is for the Cardinals, but because people are talking about it, we felt like maybe we should be as well. And because there is no game tonight to break down, that's going to be the topic of conversation. Let me know in the comments below your answer. Would you consider a Jordan Walker trade? And if so, what would the circumstances be that would compel you to maybe think about it as opposed to just hanging up the phone immediately? Because I do think there will be interested teams that call about Jordan Walker, but if they get the sense earlier that the Cardinals just aren't, it's just a non-starter, then those conversations won't go very far. But should John Mozeliak listen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below here on YouTube, as well as I'm going to plug a couple of things as we get into this. One is the YouTube channel memberships, which now has another benefit to it. I have been talking, and people have been asking about the Discord channel. When was it coming? Well, it's here, and I'm going to put the link to the Discord channel in the description to this video, as well as the link to become a channel member, because there is a membership lounge. If you sign up for the B-Schaeffer Daily Lounge tier of the YouTube membership, you'll have access to that private lounge, which is just a group chat, basically. And if you don't want to pay for it, that's totally fine, too. You can just join the free version of the Discord. And we've got channels popping off already. Folks that have joined already, I think we're up to like 50 members in the channel just after, or the server. I keep forgetting it's not a channel, it's a Discord server. I'm a little bit green to the Discord streets. But already we've got up to 50 people that are in it, and we're creating new channels all the time. There's a trade poll channel, which I will probably end up posting a trade poll after the release of this podcast episode pertaining to Jordan Walker. I feel a little bit better about putting stuff like that in a Discord channel. I used to do the trade polls on Twitter. I haven't as frequently in recent years, simply because the longer you're in this, the more you realize, the players that are being talked about are guys that could end up being traded, and they've got enough to deal with rather than maybe add to the fire and have a tweet go berserk. And sometimes it's necessary to do because people are really talking about it, and I want to be a part of that conversation and really gauge Cardinals fans on where they are on certain trade concepts. But I'm not generally in the business of pulling them out of the blue anymore on Twitter. However, Discord's going to be a little bit more of an intimate thing, and I think people can understand that when I'm putting stuff in there, it's not because I think such a trade is imminent, but it's just going to be contained to kind of our listeners of our podcast and our people, right? The Discord channel is a chance for our people to be together. If you listen to B-Schaeffer Daily, we're going to live tweet Cardinals games basically from the Discord channel. If that's something that's an alternative to Twitter that you'd prefer, because you can take all the political clutter and all the other clutter that happens on our Twitter timelines anymore, and you can just say, don't really need that. We can just talk the Cardinal game with Cardinals fans. I'm hoping that the Discord can be that. So that's the quick plug for the Discord. And again, the channel membership, the benefit there is if you join the membership at the B-Schaeffer Daily Lounge tier, you'll have access to the private group chat in the Discord. But beyond the trade poll channel and the game day channel, we also started up just a moment ago. I added a stadium pics channel because people were sending their videos from DC and their pictures of the ballpark. Just a way for Cardinals fans to kind of congregate. And if you are a fan of B-Schaeffer Daily, I think it's something you'll be interested in. Again, free to join just in the most basic terms. So if you want to go check that out, the link to Discord, the new B-Schaeffer Daily Discord server, is in the description to this video, as well as check out the channel memberships, because my goodness, the live stream that we did last night was popping, and I think we got multiple new channel memberships. The support has been incredible. The growth of the podcast ever since it's kind of my own fault that it's taken till now, but ever since I decided let's actually do it daily. I know it's in the name, Be Schaeffer Daily, but for 4 years it's been Be Schaeffer Kinda Daily, and this year we really have taken it to the next level, and lo and behold, people I think are starting to gravitate toward it. And this could be a fun month for the podcast and for the YouTube channel and for Cardinals fans in general, as we don't control the trade winds, whichever way they may blow. And could the Cardinals have a very active trading period? Could it be a little bit more dormant? We'll see, but certainly we'll be talking about all the angles. And I think tonight the first one that makes sense is to dive in on this Jordan Walker thing, because this could be one that we put to bed once and for all, or if the flames continue to be stoked a little bit, will Jordan Walker's name continue to be mentioned as we roll through the month of July? That's what we're going to tackle here tonight on the show. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, obviously, if you haven't done that already. Be Schaeffer Daily, daily Cardinals conversation here on YouTube and on Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe or follow Be Schaeffer Daily in any of those locations, and it won't steer you wrong. Okay, let's talk Jordan Walker. What would you do, Cardinals fans? Jordan Walker came into the season with expectations to be middle-of-the-order force for the Cardinals. I don't think that's crazy to say. The idea that he was going to take the year 2 leap and improve upon the numbers that he put together last year, which were really, really good in his age 21 season. This is a guy that didn't even turn 21 until mid-May, and now he's 22 years old as we sit here today and struggling. You know, the season has not gone the way that Jordan Walker hoped that it would. You look at last year's numbers, he put together a 276 average and a 787 OPS, good on base near 350, slugging near 450, hit 16 homers in his rookie season. Remember, he had the stint last year where he had to go down to AAA, and it was all about launch angle, and it was about getting the ball in the air, and it was about taking advantage of that power swing by not having so many ground balls. And that's something the Cardinals wanted to see from him. And ultimately, I would say that he did a nice job of keeping the ball in the air and hitting line drives, right? And put together a really fine season. A 787 OPS was 14% above league average. His OPS plus 114 is where we come up with that number. He was just really darn good. And so you figure a year 2 leap could involve maybe an all-star campaign for Jordan Walker. 800 OPS or better was within reach. Maybe a 20 to 25, 30 home run season. Maybe he steals 10 to 15 bases as well. Like, the sky seemed to be the limit. But Jordan Walker bottomed out, essentially, coming into this 2024 campaign. Only played 20 games with the Cardinals to begin the season, but the numbers were glaring. A 155 batting average and just had no power to speak of. 4 doubles and a triple, but no home runs in 67 plate appearances in those 20 games, and struck out 18 times. The strikeout rate, not crazy, but still, I mean, kind of elevated when there was no power to offset it, right? A 497 OPS, and he was slugging 259, and the Cardinals finally got to the point where they had to send him down because it just wasn't working. The concern since then has been that Jordan Walker has not kind of snapped it back into place compared to what you would think for him going down to a lower level should be able to have a lot of success and maybe have it be a short stint and make his way back rather quickly. Well, he's spent 53 games down there in AAA to this point. 237 plate appearances, about 4 times as many as he had at the big league level this year. Not quite that many, but pushing it as he continues his AAA season. 4 home runs in that span, which if you pace that out for a full season pace, would be about 10, maybe 10 home runs in a full season. 21 RBIs, 40 strikeouts, which is, not crazy at all, the strikeout numbers, but just had very lackluster AAA performance by Walker this year. 244 average, 304 on base, and a 382 slug for a 686 OPS. Now, keep this in mind. We're going to kind of dissect Jordan Walker a little bit, and when doing that, I think it's almost important to remember, well, how did it happen in 2023? Did he go down and immediately mash AAA pitching? The answer then was even kind of no. right? He had a 746 OPS in AAA last year in 29 games, over 135 plate appearances. Hit 4 home runs in that span when he was sent down last year in a little more than half the time that he spent down in AAA already. Same amount of home runs last year, 4. And he was seeing at least a little bit of power production, but the 746 OPS is kind of underwhelming. He ended up with a better OPS at the big league level, but that was his introduction to AAA. Remember, the Cardinals brought him in straight out of a AA campaign in 2022. Out of spring training, he made the team in 23 without ever seeing AAA. So still to this day, Jordan Walker has only played about a half a season at AAA in his life, if you combine the 29 games from last year and the 53 from this year. Just not a lot of experience. I'm not freaking out about Jordan Walker's numbers in AAA, but I would also say the Cardinals are going to want to see a little bit more in terms of the consistency, and certainly the power is going to be part of that, but they're going to want to see more, I would imagine, before giving him the call-up back to St. Louis. I do think that moment's going to come at some point this season, but right now it's kind of hard to make that plunge and to commit to Jordan Walker back to the big club when you start to look at the outfield and the way that they use the DH at the big league level this year. Even if he was hitting, like, they'd find a way to get him into the lineup. I don't have any doubt about that. But when he's not really breaking the door down at AAA, it's hard to look at the big league roster and say, well, center field, you can just get that out of your mind. It's not viable to have Walker in center defensively. He needs to stay in right field, and maybe he's a DH at some point, but actually did show some improvement in the field and right in the stint that he had at the beginning of the season with St. Louis. But he's going to play right field. Lars Nootbaar is going to play a corner outfield spot. The Cardinals are not inclined to put him in center. If they were, then you could make a case that there'd be an opening in a spot to find for Jordan Walker if and when he's hitting. But given that I don't think they want Nootbaar there, and I think that's right, by the way, you might say, well, why can't he play center? Well, I think he could be adequate at it, but it's also kind of like the Tyler O'Neill situation when we were all kind of scratching our heads going, why would they put O'Neill in center? Why would they even try it knowing his injury history? Center is a more demanding defensive position than either corner, and you're almost asking for trouble with a guy who spends half the year on the IL anyway. Well, Lars Nootbaar is kind of getting to that territory in terms of his availability. He's injured a lot, and that is a frustration when you've got a guy that you think is so talented, but you can't keep him on the field. There's no reason to test their luck just getting Lars Nootbaar back from the injured list. It would surprise me considerably if they were to make that move to move him to center. We know Ciani is doing a nice job defensively. We'll see what happens when Tommy Edman comes back as far as how much he eats into that playing time. They've put Dylan Carlson out there for a spell here and there, but it's just that's kind of its own thing right now, the center field spot. Left field has been mostly Donovan. He's done a very good job there defensively, to my eye anyway, this year. And offensively, he's a fixture in the lineup. So he's got to be in there. He could play some second, too, but Gorman's going to usually be at second. So Donovan in left field makes a lot of sense. Alec Burleson also has to play. And I feel like he's going to be DHing a lot more now that Nootbaar is back, simply because between Donovan, Nootbaar, and Burleson, Burley's kind of the odd man out defensively of that trio. So, especially on days where Contreras is not DHing and Contreras is behind the plate, you'll have Burleson DHing more often than not. I'll be curious to see in certain matchups if they do find a way, if they're trying to stick an extra lefty bat in the lineup, especially after Edman gets back, if they don't put Burleson at first base on occasion and give Paul Goldschmidt a few sporadic days off here and there down the stretch. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe in certain matchups it would make sense given Goldie's struggles this year. But generally speaking, all those positions are kind of accounted for. And so as we're talking Jordan Walker, in order to justify his reinsertion into the lineup, you're going to have to see something from him offensively. So I feel like the Cardinals are comfortable saying, hey, you're 22, take your time. We're not going to rush this like we did the first time. And there were compelling reasons to do that the first time with Jordan Walker. And last year, if you even made the case that they rushed him, but then after a quick stint in Memphis, his numbers jumped up and he was a better hitter in the big leagues last year than he was during that 29-game stint in Memphis. So I can't really fault the Cardinals for say, oh, they rushed him. Well, no, I mean, he ended up handling it. Now, year two, though, the league clearly has made the adjustments to be able to get Jordan Walker out, and he's got to now adjust back and work on those things in the minor leagues. In so doing, what do you make of his trade value? Have other teams noticed the struggles and said, oh, maybe Jordan Walker isn't the guy that we all thought he was going to be, top prospect caliber player? Maybe he's just not that guy. Or do you think teams are still going, you know what, if the Cardinals are dumb enough to do it again, if they're dumb enough to trade away another outfielder because of whatever reason, in this case it's just a disappointing 22-year-old campaign, and they decide to cut their losses, are there teams out there that still believe in Jordan Walker's potential to the extent that they would invite Jordan Walker in a trade proposal as the centerpiece of a rather significant deal? I don't know what the other 29 teams are thinking about Jordan Walker. Ken Rosenthal was on the Foul Territory podcast, I think this was earlier today, stating that he did not expect the Cardinals would be selling low on Jordan Walker, because if you traded him right now, that's exactly what you'd be doing, is trading low on, if in terms of business, like if you just think of it in terms of business management, on an asset that you had high expectations for the asset, and now it's depreciated in value at present. But at age 22, Jordan Walker is not an asset. He's a person, and he's a player. And at age 22, he's got all the potential to be able to rebound and still fulfill a lot of, if not all of, the promise that folks had for his career, and the thoughts that the glowing thoughts that people had about what he could become as a player, I think is still all there on the table. You're a little bit leery of seeing another top prospect not immediately catch on and elevate, but we do have to realize that progress is not always linear with these guys. Rarely is it. But when you're the Cardinals and you think about Jordan Walker, is he the next in line after guys like Dylan Carlson, where the Cardinals once thought Dylan Carlson was the next? He was the guy. And obviously that hasn't materialized. And it's to the point where they're ready to probably trade him away just to almost give him a change of scenery. Rosenthal, I think, correctly mentioned Dylan and Ivan Herrera as two guys that the Cardinals at the major league level have that they could potentially use in these trades for possible upgrades, be it something for the lineup, a right-handed bat, which, again, we've talked a lot about how I don't really know how one fits in, or obviously a starting pitcher, I think, would be the target that a lot of fans are circling, justifiably so. And we talked a lot about this, Charlie and I did, on low-hanging fruit earlier today, how adding a starter doesn't necessarily mean adding a number 5. It's adding a number 2. Add the type of guy that you want to slot behind Sonny Gray in a playoff series and find a way to establish and assign meaning to the idea that the Cardinals are going to win a wild card series, or at minimum get to the NLDS, however that has to happen. Maybe it happens during the regular season because they're 4.5 back of the Brewers, and the Brewers are only a couple of back of the Dodgers. And really, as much as it's fun to think, hey, maybe that division's in play, the division doesn't matter. The division on its own doesn't matter. What would matter if the Cardinals are able to win the Central is if they can leapfrog the Phillies or the Dodgers to be able to get to the number 2 ranking in the National League, because that's the point at which it actually does have a tangible benefit, aside from just getting to host the wild card series. You get to skip the wild card series if you're one of the top 2 division winners in the NL. That's how the new format, it's not new anymore, but that's how the format works. And I still would call it a benefit. I would every day of the week and twice on Sunday rather not have to play the wild card series. And I know that you could say, well, the Diamondbacks last year made it all the way from the wild card, and are the teams that are going to skip that 2 out of 3 series going to be rusty? I'm always going to say, get me through to the round that I don't have to play, and I'm always going to take that 100 times out of 100, regardless of whatever the notion of momentum could be. But, the Cardinals, I don't know how realistic they are in pursuit of passing the Dodgers or the Phillies at this point in time. So we're still just thinking about this team having to probably play a wild card series. And that leads you to, can they find a number 2 starter that is a tangible upgrade from whoever it might be at the time? Right now, you might think it's Kyle Gibson. Some nights it feels like it's Miles Michaelis. At times it's felt like Lance Lynn. I think any of those guys, whoever's the hottest hand come the end of September, could end up being the guy the Cardinals go with in a game 2. Wouldn't it be better, though, if that was your conversation for a game 3 and you had a guy for game 2 that you felt really good about, that you felt like it wasn't just seasonally dependent on how that guy's performing that week or that month, but more so this is the guy in the same vein that Sonny Gray was brought in to be the guy, to be the leader of the rotation in terms of performance. Like, that was very intentional. Ollie Marmol has made no bones about that. They were looking for, the Cardinals were seeking an opening day starter. They were seeking a game 1 in the postseason kind of starter. And I think they have that in Sonny Gray. They need a number 2, though, to be able to realistically not just get into October, but stay there longer than 24 hours like they did in 2022 when they were swept in 2 games by the Phillies. And they got to play those games at home, too, so that's all the more, I'm not going to say evidence because it's anecdotal, but it's all the more justification of why my stance is, look, play the games at home, play them on the road. A wild card series is a wild card series. Just get in, and good things can happen. You don't necessarily have to be the home team hosting or the division winner in the Central to get the right to host that. It's always going to be nice. I'm sure Bill DeWitt Jr. would not agree with me on minimizing the importance of that because, you know, the revenue for those home games is going to be substantial if you get them. But nevertheless, just getting in is the priority. Then I think finding a way to win there is the priority. And that's where a number 2 starter, I still think a right-handed reliever and somebody with ideally closing experience, but just even leverage experience would be good enough. Hopefully a guy with some swing and miss, and ideally a right-hander that you could add to the group of Helsley and JoJo and Kittredge and Ryan Fernandez, guys that you feel good about in leverage. I think that's your foursome. You'd like to have another. The best teams in October typically will. So those, that's kind of what I'm looking at is a starter, but kind of higher end, which could be easier said than done. I'm not afraid of guys on expiring contracts when it comes to that because in theory, it makes them a little more affordable. At least in theory, you don't have to give up quite as much in prospect capital for guys that are on expiring deals like Max Scherzer, who I continue to believe would be a really interesting option if the Rangers should sell. But if that's what you're targeting is the Cardinals, and it's what we think they should be targeting, whether they actually will be or not, sort of remains to be seen. But beyond that, there's the notion of the Cardinals. I'm not going to say targeting a right-handed bat because I don't think that's the way it's being characterized. But reading Katie Woo's story for The Athletic from, I guess this was yesterday. What's today? Tuesday? I sound like Keith Kachuk. From Monday, she titled, "As Cardinals Cruise, Right-Handed Production Will Be a Trade Deadline Focal Point." Now, if you read the story, that doesn't say, hey, the Cardinals are going to trade for a right-handed bat. They said so. That's not really it. They need the production one way or another, though, I think is the point of this article. And it has been characterized thusly by the team, with Ollie Marmol saying in a quote from Katie's story on Sunday regarding Wilson Contreras when he was out of the lineup, that's what we were missing when he was gone, was a big right-handed bat. And they got Wilson back, obviously, and he's kind of stepped right back into those shoes, has hit a couple of big home runs on the road trip, and now the Cardinals return home, hopefully with him just continuing to groove, and that would be great to see in the middle of the order. Obviously, a major part of the Cardinals' early season struggles, and something that it's still kind of going on to an extent, but they're finding ways around it, is the lack of production from Goldschmidt and Arenado. Those two guys were top 3 in the MVP voting in 2022. Goldie won the damn thing. And last year they had a bit of a drop-off, and this year the drop-off has been even more stark. Goldie around a 650 OPS. Arenado is sub 700 with his OPS. And both guys are right-handed middle-order producers that just have not been producing as such. And that ropes us back into the Jordan Walker conversation because he's not currently helping your team, but when you think about the way the team was constructed and why they're currently seeking additional right-handed production, Jordan Walker, I think, is 1/3 of that, essentially. I'm not saying he should have been expected to do the same as Goldie and Arenado this year with him being 22 and those guys being, a decade or more his senior. But I thought Walker OPSing around 800, or at least matching what he did last year in the 780s for an OPS, and being like a really viable number 4, number 5, maybe number 6 hitter in the order. Maybe depending on how you structured it, he would have been a nice number 2. Like, Walker was supposed to be doing that, and the fact that he's not been has contributed. Goldie and Arenado, I think, more of the responsibility because there's a pedigree there. They're making the salary as well, and they're not giving the production, and they're still batting 4 and 5 most nights in the order. That's still going on to this day. So, right-handed production, 100% it's a need. I just don't know, and if you read Katie's story, I think she kind of takes a similar approach. Like, it is a question of whether the production exists internally or whether they'll have to look elsewhere for it. But sort of the unspoken part in that is, if you do look elsewhere for it, how does it fit? Because I could go around the horn, I could go across the diamond and tell you where everybody's going to be playing. And I'll be conservative with it and say, like, let's ignore that guys like Pages are going to start behind the plate occasionally. That guys like Ciani are going to start in center field occasionally, or more often than occasionally, even after Edman gets back. But I think you're looking catcher, Contreras, Goldie first, Gorman second, Arenado third, Wynn short, Donovan in left, Edman in center, or Ciani, and Nootbaar in right. And then you figure out the DH, that's going to be Burleson because I haven't said his name. That's your lineup. There's not anywhere to put anybody unless you're trading from that group. And I do not believe that John Mozeliak is looking to shake the tree to the extent of trading a Nootbaar or trading a Burleson or a Donovan or a Gorman. Nor would I necessarily advocate for doing any of that. Now, I think there's always a price. If you're getting a piece that's just a slam dunk piece that fits like a glove into the puzzle pieces of this roster, then I think you do it. And that's always true. But I don't think the offer of Ohtani for Burleson is coming through the phone lines, right? So in terms of realism, it's hard to imagine the Cardinals trading for a right-handed bat at full strength that then slots into the lineup, because the question would then be, who does it come at the expense of? The right-handed production would be great to see if it could be Jordan Walker down the stretch, and then you could work some platoon matchups and keep guys a little more fresh by rotating them in. Not to the extent that they were at the beginning of last year, when it was like you had 6 outfielders for 3 spots and nobody was finding comfort and nobody was finding a rhythm, but more so if you've got 4 to 5 at the most, and one of those guys is a Ciani who you expect is maybe going to turn more into a bit player as a defensive replacement, as an occasional pinch runner, and he'll draw maybe a couple of starts a week with fly ball pitchers on the mound. Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if Tommy Edman comes out and he produces to his career norms of like a 726 OPS, that is still 150 points higher than what Ciani is giving the Cardinals right now. I'm not saying Ciani isn't the better defender, because I think he probably is, almost certainly is. But Edman is good enough that 150 points of OPS, I think that trade-off is going to happen 3-4 times a week, at least, if that is the way that Edman comes back healthy and performs, which is still a question. It's not a given. But considering all that, I just don't know that trading for right-handed production is going to be something that happens unless you're trading somebody that would be part of that matrix, and that could be Jordan Walker. Like, would you trade Jordan Walker for a pitcher? No, I probably wouldn't. Would you trade Jordan Walker for a hitter? Kind of depends on who the hitter is. But there's a couple names that I think would be interesting to it. I would not hang the phone up. If I got a call from, and I'll give you a couple of names. I'm just going to tell you, they won't be realistic. I don't think they're imminent. I don't think this is going to happen. But if I'm getting a call from the Toronto Blue Jays, and they're asking about Jordan Walker, and I'm John Mozeliak, I'm asking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I'm at least going to see where that conversation goes if they don't hang up the phone in my face, you know? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had an OPS of 1,000 in 2021. Since then, he's fallen off that pace. That was like his one career outlier year. But the last 3 years, he's at 818 OPS, 788, which is a point higher than Walker's rookie year last season. And then this year, he's an 830 OPS, only 64 strikeouts and 389 plate appearances, which is a pretty good mark. he's always been on pace for right around 100 strikeouts per year. Vladdy Jr. has a higher batting average this year than he had in 22 or 23. A little higher on base. The slug is right around. He's got 13 home runs this season. But these are his quote-unquote kind of his down years, right? He's still not reached back to the pinnacle of 2021 when at age 22 he had 1,000 OPS. I'm not trading Jordan Walker is my official stance, because what I expect would happen is those 29 other teams, even if they believe that Jordan Walker is a cost-controlled star in the making, they can pretend like they don't and see if the Cardinals will bite. See if the Cardinals will psych themselves out because they know how many times that they've gotten it wrong when it comes to outfielders, whether it's the guys they've traded, like Arozarena or Lane Thomas, which, again, I could defend that Lane Thomas trade because at the time I think it looked perfectly fine and things happen. Adolis Garcia, they let him go. You could go on and on and on with these guys, right? And then there's the guys that they kept that maybe they shouldn't have. They tried it for very long with Harrison Bader, and eventually they traded him. I think they got good value for him. Jordan Montgomery was a good piece until the Cardinals moved him. But they held on until they felt they couldn't anymore, right? Tyler O'Neill, they held on until he had virtually no value anymore with this team, and then they traded him to Boston, where he's had stints on the injured list for sure, but the numbers have been more similar to the top 10 MVP season that Tyler O'Neill had a number of years ago. What was that, 2021 with the Cardinals? The OPS plus at 139. He's got an 871 OPS this year in 63 games. Has hit 16 homers. Tyler O'Neill is having a great season. The Cardinals got the worst end of the stick on that deal. They just did, right? That's the kind of right-handed power you'd love to have in this lineup. But it wasn't going to happen in St. Louis. It just wasn't. And that's a thing that's fair to be frustrated by, because when guys go elsewhere and do great, but if the options at home had been fine, we would never be talking about Arozarena or O'Neill or any of these guys over the years if the Cardinals outfield was constantly just churning out studs. But they're constantly churning out disappointment in terms of the guys that you want in there are either not healthy or they don't meet expectation in terms of the production on the field, and it's a revolving door. It has been this way for a decade, it feels. So that's a frustration. And then there's the guys that you kept that you still have, like Carlson, who had the 780 OPS in his rookie year, just like Jordan Walker, but now has reached the Tyler O'Neill territory of they're going to have to trade him to get him a fresh start, and they're not going to get a bunch of value back because the team that gets him is buying low. There's no disputing that the Red Sox bought Tyler O'Neill low when they bought him, because the Cardinals held on, and then they ended up with egg on their face because their plan for Tyler O'Neill in 2023 didn't work, and then the relationships were maybe fractured at that point, and it just felt like the obvious move as John Mozeliak is going through his offseason shopping list, his to-do list, is, got to move Tyler O'Neill to get him a fresh start. But what did the Cardinals tangibly gain from that? Not really anything. No offense to Nick Robertson, who's been on the injured list, and maybe if he was healthy, it would be different. Although he did come off the list and I think has just been stashed away in AAA. They activated him but optioned him. He had okay numbers with the Cardinals in a really short stint. His numbers, I'm checking now in Memphis, have not been good. So they basically got nothing tangibly for Tyler O'Neill. It is what it is. The Cardinals could psych themselves out, I guess I would say, and that would be the thing that other MLB teams would be hoping to see. I do not expect the Cardinals to psych themselves out regarding Jordan Walker. That's the kind of guy that you go down with the ship on. They would take the Carlson route to this point more so than the route that they took with Arozarena, which they didn't really sell Arozarena because he had a bad stint. They just never really fully got to see what he could do. That was the mistake that was made there. It would be more akin to Lane Thomas, although Walker has a higher pedigree than Thomas ever did. Thomas has turned in some good MLB seasons with the Nationals, but it was comparable in that Thomas, the season, I think it was 21, that they traded him, he was just so bad. He looked so bad. And that was, I think, a COVID thing, but was a thing that happened. And, they ended up getting very little for him. John Lester was useful in the role that he served, but it was another short-term role for a guy that has now given the Nationals a number of years of solid production. I think his numbers are lesser this year, as we've talked about, when it comes to Lane Thomas, but he's had several years, and he's still only 28 years old. He's got 8 home runs this year, a 710 OPS. He's an above-average OPS at this point, and I think he's probably been playing mostly corner outfield. Yeah, just a little bit of center, mostly right field for Lane Thomas this year. But a 105 OPS plus. Last year was a 115. Year before that was a 102, and following the trade to Washington in 2021, he had an 850 OPS with a 133 OPS plus. So he's been in his career with the Nationals 11% above league average, 755 OPS. You know, that I guess is the level of risk that or the type of risk that you're talking about, is trade a guy low because you just feel like it's not going to work. That's kind of how it went with Tyler O'Neill. Honestly, they traded him low because they felt like it just wasn't going to work, and he went somewhere and has been good. Jordan Walker, different than either of those scenarios because top prospect status, upside is through the roof. Not performing, but not costing you at the big league level right now because he's working on things in the minors. And the Cardinals are prepared to give him the time to do that. But if you're called about a big name or a big couple of names, the other concept I'll bring up as it pertains to Walker, again, my stance is wouldn't trade him. But there's always a price, right? If you're talking about Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert from the White Sox, would you consider it? Would you talk about Jordan Walker in that context? Let me give you the full context before you say no and unsubscribe because you're so mad that I even brought it up. And I feel like the vote could be a little more split right now from Cardinals fans. Some say, I'm spooked. I think Jordan Walker may not be that dude anymore. Trade him while he does still have value. Don't let it go the way of Dylan Carlson, where, one day you wake up and it's too late. There's going to be other Cardinals fans that say, nope, I'm going down with the ship. If Jordan Walker is no good, then I don't know ball because I know that Jordan Walker is going to be good. And so I think there's going to be more of a split there, whereas at the beginning of the year, if we had done this in spring training, people would have said, you're nuts. Jordan Walker is the not only the future, but the present. He's going to be great this year. So a few months can change perspectives for sure. But a few months can also change perspectives on a Garrett Crochet, who had been used as a reliever to this point in his big league career, was injured all of 2022, but before this season had never made a big league start. I believe he came up with the White Sox in the year that he was drafted, the summer that he was drafted, but as a reliever, because that's the easiest way to fast-track a guy to the big leagues. And he was good, and he was good again the next year, and then he got hurt, and he was still pretty good last year when he came back in a shorter stint as a reliever. This year, they did the same thing that the Giants did with Jordan Hicks and said, Garrett Crochet, you're in the rotation. Now he's tied for the league lead and starts to this point. He's taking the ball every time. He's got a 3.08 ERA, a 6-6 record, 146 strikeouts in 105 innings. Leads the major leagues in strikeouts at 146. Also leads the American League in FIP, fielding independent pitching, at 2.43. You take a guy that leads the AL in FIP and you bring him to the Cardinals with a defense of, Ciani out there and Mason Wynn at shortstop and Arenado at third and Goldie at first and Gorman, who has improved at second. Nootbaar is in right. Contreras Rapajas behind the plate. I feel like Garrett Crochet could come to the Cardinals and be a huge difference maker. And what's fun about him is he's only 25 years old. Well, he just turned 25 in June, and he's a free agent not until 2027. You'd have him for 25 and 26 in arbitration. Final 2 years of arb. That 2.5 years of a guy who looks like an elite starter. If he's leading the league in strikeouts and he's leading the league in FIP and leading the league in Ks per nine and has taken the ball every single time he's pitched, he had his, I assume 22. I can't remember for Crochet, but I assume that was his Tommy John, and that was why he missed 2022. But that's almost like better if that's the case, because you've already had it. So you figure, all right, and yeah, it was Tommy John for Garrett Crochet in 22. You had it in the next 2-3 years, should be some of the best years of his career in his mid to late 20s. So, would I trade Jordan Walker? no is my first answer. Would I hang up the phone if I'm talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the right-handed production that you're hoping Jordan Walker can eventually ascend to become? No, I would have to. And even with Vladdy only having this and next year of team control before he gets a massive contract, I would have to at least talk about it, because as much as I think Jordan Walker can turn into that, the bird in the hand, bird in the bush, etc., you just don't know at this point. Maybe you do. And if the Cardinals are convicted in that, great. I hope it happens. I think it will happen. I think Jordan Walker is going to end up being a career OPS 800 type of guy, 810, and that's going to mean multiple all-star appearances and a really solid career. Don't know exactly what it'll mean positionally. I think he can stick in right field. The arm is a cannon, so that's to his benefit. But you're talking about Garrett Crochet, a lefty, which the Cardinals could use given the whole Steven Matz of it all, that you'd have for a couple of years. Would I do it for him alone? Pitchers are so fickle, man. They're going to get hurt. You're going to really be sad. I don't think I could do it. Objectively, should I be willing? Probably. But I wouldn't be. And if Walker ends up not making it and Crochet wins a couple of Cy Youngs, then, pretend I never said any of this. But would I do it if we're talking about a larger package on both sides and you're getting Luis Robert to be that right-handed production? And he's got pretty good numbers this year offensively, has spent a lot of time on the shelf injured, but has got enough of a sample now, 38 games, 159 plate appearances. He's only hitting 224, but he's slugging 490. He's got 10 homers. He's on pace for damn near 40 home runs this year if you had a full 600 plate appearance type of season. His OPS plus is 120. He's 20% above league average. For his career, the 26-year-old has been 25% above league average, and he's OPSing 791, which is 4 points higher than Walker last year. And you haven't ever had the year from Luis Robert that's been below that 750, 746 range. He was a 738 as a rookie, as a 22-year-old, and has been improving from there. Career OPS of 824. If you told me you could get Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert, and I believe Robert has next year under team control before becoming a free agent in 2026, ahead of 2026. So you'd have 2.5 years of Crochet, a year and a half of Robert. Center field-wise, he's been okay. For his career, he's a -6. He's a -15. Some of the fielding metrics are whatever they are. Total zone, he's a -15, but defensive runs saved, he's a +15. So take that for what it is. Outs above average, I'd have to look at where Luis Robert would land on that. But if you're OPSing 800 or better for your career, I get it. Michael Ciani is unbelievable in center. Sorry, that was my search to try to find Luis Robert on the OAA list, and he might not be on here simply because of playing time. He's 1 out above average, so he's been fine defensively in center. Granted, Ciani is the best. He did tie. He tied now Jacob Young. He's got 13 outs above average after the weekend in Washington. Marcus Semien has 14, and that's the list. So Ciani's tied for second in all of baseball defensively and has played a lot fewer innings than Semien. There's also a success rate metric here on Baseball Savant. Ciani is second in baseball in that. Blake Perkins has him beat by just a little bit. But yeah, Ciani has been unbelievable. Success rate added. I don't know what all these mean, but he's 9% success rate added. Second best in baseball is Jacob Young. I'm talking about every player, not just center fielders. Jacob Young is 6%. Ciani is 8%. He's been the best fielder in baseball. But Luis Robert hits nukes. So would I trade Jordan Walker, or would I at least continue the conversation if it's, hey, Cardinals, you're the team we're dealing with in a blockbuster. You're getting Luis Robert Jr. to be your center fielder. You're getting Garrett Crochet for your rotation. Two guys with some team control attached. Star players, I think, with the way they're both performing this year. You're going to trade Jordan Walker. You're going to trade multiple pitching prospects that are going to be painful. Probably Tink Hence, perhaps Cooper Jerpy. Maybe it's Quinn Matthews, who I would try to hold on to, but if this is who the White Sox want, this is all hypothetical. Who Graceffo is maybe in the next tier. Who do you trade? I would have to at least think about that. But those are like the isolated examples where I could see, as John Mozeliak trying to get into his shoes for a moment, even considering talking about Jordan Walker. It would feel foolish not to when these guys feel like guaranteed production. Realistically, though, if you were talking about a Robert Crochet package, would Walker, Tink Hence, and Cooper Jerpy even be enough? Probably not. I always tend to err on the side of conservatism because I don't want to be the dope that assumes I know something that the White Sox could be tuning into this podcast going, that's insane. No, we're going to get, 3 top 50 prospects if we're giving up that package. And I'd be like, you're probably right. What do I know? But Jordan Walker was once a top 10 prospect. Tink Hence is currently top 50. So maybe it's not all that far off. Would I consider it then? I would, because I think if you made that move, those are like the 2 biggest weaknesses of the Cardinals at this point. Right-handed middle order bat that can play center field, checks a lot of boxes. Left-handed flamethrower, strikes out the world, lowest FIP in baseball to be your number 2 starter, checks a lot of boxes. Cardinals would instantly, I think, become a threat in the National League. I would put them right up there. Record-wise, they wouldn't be there, but I would put them definitively above everybody besides the Dodgers and the Phillies in terms of going into a playoff series and going to war with some of these other NL teams. So flags do fly forever. Does that put you in position to maybe win a flag, win a pennant? It might. But that's the rare circumstance and the one that's not realistic. I'm not trying to tell anybody it's going to happen. Feel free to, call me a bozo in the comments, but I've given all the context that I possibly can for this conversation. That's the realm in which I would even consider Jordan Walker in a trade. It's got to be huge. And if I'm another team, one of the other 29, calling about Jordan Walker, I'm like, no, I'm going to kind of do that thing that you do in fantasy football negotiations where I talk down about the player I'm trying to get from you. I'm not giving my best to get him, but if I can get him on the cheap, man, I'll do it. Jordan Walker, that's a future talent. That's a guy that's got some promise still. But unless you're talking about Vladimir Guerrero or like a Crochet Robert, where the Cardinals are also gonna heap in some legit pieces, like would you do Lars Nootbaar in that? I'm not saying it makes sense because he's got more team control, but and he's also somebody that should be factoring in and helping your team right now. Would I do Nolan Gorman in something like that? Yeah, I probably would. Not saying I'm just going to slam the button, but would I consider it? Yeah. Walker and Gorman. Yeah, probably, because you could think, okay, Donovan moves to second, Nootbaar back to left, Burleson to right. You could find ways to finagle it and make it work. Luis Robert, obviously, the center. I'm not saying these are realistic. I'm just saying it's got to be on that tier before I would even go, yeah, the Cardinals, I think, should listen on Jordan Walker. So are any of those scenarios with the Blue Jays or the White Sox going to come to fruition? No. So that's where I'm at. No, I wouldn't trade Jordan Walker if I'm John Mozeliak. Should they consider it? You always listen. And Mo has said that before. It's kind of gotten him into trouble before, where he's basically said you always listen, and then that got kind of taken out of context. I think that was with the Arenado Goldie stuff. But his point was very like a pragmatic one, which is, well, there's always a price. If I'm offered Shohei and they're going to eat half of his contract and they get 1 year of Paul Goldschmidt, declining asset, you go, well, yeah, I'm doing that. Got to get approval from the owner first, but yeah, we're doing that trade. So generally speaking, like, you always are going to listen. But John Mozeliak's not getting a text or a phone call that says, hey, we're going to drop Luis Robert Jr. and Garrett Crochet on your doorstep. Can you make it work so that we can get some pieces back? I just don't think that's coming. And the same with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If it happens, holy crap, we're going to get a lot of new subscribers because we're going to be talking about it. But that is about all I have to say about that subject. What did I miss? What angle am I not am I not seeing? And who's another name that you would say, you know what, I agree with your stance, Brenden, on not trading Walker, but if this name came about, maybe I would have to put it in the category of the Crochet Robert thing or the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. thing. Let me know who that name would be, or are you just holding serve? You're a believer in Walker and you think, heck, he might be the right-handed production answer later this year. What if Nootbaar goes back on the injured list? and they say, you know what, we're trading Carlson for a relief pitcher, and we're calling up Walker to play right field come hell or high water, and let's go to bat. Maybe that's something that could still happen. Hopefully Nootbaar's not on the injured list, but I was just trying to think of an obvious way that the Cardinals could be if Walker hits 3 dingers in a week and Nootbaar, goes back on the IL for something else. They're like, all right, that's just a direct replacement. Put Jordan in right field, and let's see if it's time to make this thing go. Imagine the emotional boost that getting Walker back and having him produce for this team this year would bring to the Cardinal clubhouse. I'm sure all those guys would be rooting for him. So, that's still something that could happen. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. I appreciate you guys for listening. I went longer-winded than I thought I would, but you get to talking about some of these hypotheticals, and it does get interesting. So hopefully you found it interesting as well. One more plug for the Discord. I will put the link in the description to the video as well as the channel membership. We've gained some new members this week. It helps as I continue to produce this podcast and make it grow. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you next time on Be Schaeffer Daily. Peace.